imagine you wake up, pour yourself a cup of coffee, and just pull up your news feed.
Like we all do.
Right, exactly. And right there at the top of the screen is this massive historic headline about nuclear weapons.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's the kind of breaking news that makes you stop mid-sip, reread the first paragraph, maybe even text a link to a friend.
The kind of stuff that just dominates the timeline.
Totally. And to you, to me, to the average reader consuming this over breakfast, it's exactly that. Just a breaking news story about global military capabilities.
Right, just reporting the facts.
But, well, what if it isn't? What if that headline was never actually meant for you at all?
Yeah, that completely changes how you look at it.
What if you are literally just the unwitting carrier wave for a highly calculated, covert message planted specifically for foreign intelligence agencies to intercept?
It completely flips the script on how we consume information. I mean, we tend to operate under this assumption that public headlines and secret intelligence are, two completely separate, walled-off worlds.
Like church and state.
Exactly. The news is for the public, and classified briefings are for the war rooms. But the reality of modern statecraft is that those two worlds blur together constantly. You might think you are just reading the morning paper, but you're actually reading someone else's mail.
Someone else's mail. I love that. And deciphering that mail is our entire mission for today's deep dive. We are unpacking this really fascinating piece of geopolitical commentary written by Deepesh Devakaran.
Really interesting piece.
Yeah, and this text analyzes a recent highly publicized report from SIPRI. That's the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute.
Right.
The core of this report, the breaking news that caught the entire world's attention, was the claim that India has 12 nuclear warheads forward deployed.
Which is massive.
Huge. And according to the source, this is for the first time in its history.
And, while the internet and the global media ecosystem were reacting to just the surface-level facts of that deployment, the commentary we are examining decided to look underneath the floorboard.
Yeah, to see how it was built.
Exactly. It asked us to examine the architectural blueprints of how a geopolitical narrative is constructed, rather than just admiring the finished house.
And look, before we really get going, I want to be crystal clear about our angle here with you, the listener. We are not here today to play fortune teller, nor are we here to endorse the author's politics, military assertions, or specific geopolitical predictions.
Right. We are strictly analyzing the text.
Right. Whether these events play out exactly as the text describes is not the point of our discussion. We are looking at this purely as a masterclass in the mechanics of global signaling. We are impartially analyzing a highly compelling theory about how nations use the media ecosystem to play three-dimensional geopolitical chess.
Yeah, it is an exploration of the how and the why behind the flow of incredibly sensitive, world-altering information. It's about understanding information as a targeted payload.
And I can promise you, by the end of this deep dive, you will never look at a headline citing unnamed intelligence officials the same way again.
You really won't.
The surface narrative will never quite be enough. So let's start with the anatomy of what the author calls a controlled leak.
Okay.
The surface reality is pretty simple. SIPRI confirmed India's 12 forward-deployed warheads. Every major media house ran this headline. Nationalists celebrated it. Defense analysts debated it.
Everyone took the information at face value.
Exactly. But the author points out that almost everyone missed the single most crucial question here.
How did they know?
Right.
I mean, it is the foundational question of all intelligence work. How did a Peace Research Institute in Stockholm acquire this highly classified, incredibly specific metric about India's nuclear arsenal?
And the text really leans into the geography of information here.
Right.
And it paints a stark picture. SIPRI sits in Stockholm, Sweden.
Thousands of miles away.
Right. They're not walking the halls in New Delhi. They certainly aren't sitting inside India's Strategic Forces Command. And they're definitely not embedded inside the hull of the INS Ariane submarine.
No, of course not.
They do not have a desk in the war room.
Furthermore, SIPRI's own documentation admits they don't have some mythical, deeply embedded spy feeding them secrets.
Right. No James Bond character.
Exactly. Their methodology, as cited in the text, relies on analyzing commercial satellite imagery and, crucially, engaging in private conversations with unnamed officials.
Unnamed Indian officials.
Mm-hmm.
Just sit with that for a second. The text argues that a nation-state with a sophisticated security apparatus does not just accidentally slip up and reveal the exact number of its forward-deployed nuclear warheads to a Swedish researcher over a casual hunch.
No, that just doesn't happen.
The author specifically points to the architect behind India's security strategy, NSA Ajit Doval. The text highlights that Doval has decades of hardcore covert operations experience.
Very serious background.
Very. The underlying claim is that under his watch, India does not leak by accident. Everything is deliberate.
Yeah, when a state security apparatus is run by individuals with deep backgrounds in covert operations, the information environment is treated with absolute control. You don't just drop a detail like 12 forward deployed warheads randomly. A controlled leak is a precision tool.
Okay, let's unpack this because I really need to wrap my head around the logic of this specific mechanism. Instead of the cliché magician waving a wand, let's think about this like the financial world.
Okay, I like that.
This feels like a ruthless short seller who wants to tank a company's stock, but they don't want their fingerprints on the market manipulation.
Right, they need distance.
Yeah, so they leak a devastating anonymous dossier to a legitimate financial journalist. The journalist publishes it, the stock tanks, the short seller profits, and they never had to make an official public statement.
A classic maneuver.
But here's where I struggle and have to push back a little. In finance, that makes sense. In nuclear deterrence, if a nation wants to send a threatening message to an adversary, why go through this convoluted whisper campaign? Why not just have the head of state stand at a podium, look dead into a television camera, and make a fiery, unmistakable speech?
What's fascinating here is it comes down to the concept of plausible deniability combined with the raw credibility of the messenger. If a political leader stands at a podium and makes a fiery speech about nuclear readiness, how is that interpreted globally?
I mean, it's instantly dismissed as domestic political posturing, right?
Yeah.
Or diplomatic grandstanding.
Exactly. It gets filed under rhetoric. Adversaries might view it as an escalation, but they will also heavily discount it as propaganda aimed at winning the next election.
I see.
But if a globally recognized independent Western institute like SIPRI publishes a dry, highly technical report stating that warheads are at sea, the credibility shifts entirely. The emotional rhetoric is stripped away, leaving only an objective, terrifying fact.
But wouldn't foreign intelligence agencies see right through that? I mean, if Doval is known for this and everyone in the intelligence community knows it's a controlled leak, doesn't it lose its plausible deniability?
Well, it is not about tricking the foreign intelligence agency into thinking it was a genuine accident. They know it's a message.
Oh, they know.
Oh, yeah, it is about diplomatic protocol. By laundering the message through a Swedish think tank, the state's hands remain officially clean. They didn't issue a formal threat. They didn't summon an ambassador.
Right.
They didn't violate any diplomatic norms. An unnamed official merely had a conversation, and an independent body published their own findings. It allows a state to project immense power and alter the strategic calculus without ever having to officially alter its diplomatic stance.
Wow.
You leave the adversary with a massive problem, but no official statement to respond to.
So the think tank is literally just the medium, which logically brings us to the other side of the receiver. If we understand the mechanics of how the author believes this message was covertly broadcast, we had to figure out who was actually supposed to tune in.
Right.
Because clearly this wasn't for the guy reading the morning paper.
No, the general public provides the noise to mask the signal. The real audience is highly specific, and the text makes a very pointed effort to establish who is not the primary target.
Yes, the text sets up what it considers a decoy audience. The author asserts very clearly that the SIPRI leak was not intended for Pakistan.
Which is interesting.
Right. The commentary gets quite cryptic here, referencing that Pakistan has already learned its lesson in May 2025, and it goes on to mention something called Operation Sindoor 2 as a future catalyst.
Yeah, that caught my eye too.
The author doesn't spell out the gritty details, but clearly sets these up as established, understood triggers.
The author is utilizing these references May 2025, Operation Sindoor 2, to establish a baseline of existing, perhaps inevitable tension.
Okay.
By framing Pakistan as a regional adversary that has already been factored into the equation, the text dismisses them as the primary recipient of this specific global-level nuclear signaling. The true strategic focus is operating on a much larger axis.
The text claims the real intended targets of this Stockholm leak are Washington and Beijing.
The heavy hitters.
Exactly. And the underlying message they are meant to extract from the SIPRI report is stark. The author translates the subtext of the leak. We have live warheads at sea. Our submarines are already on patrol. And, perhaps most terrifyingly, our response time is now 0.
We really need to pause on that phrase, response time is now 0, because it is the absolute crux of the deterrence message.
It sounds intense.
It is. To understand why this is so monumental, you have to look at historical nuclear posture. Traditionally, many nuclear-armed nations, India historically included, operated on a principle of demating.
Demating, what does that mean?
This meant keeping the nuclear warheads physically separated from the delivery systems, like the missiles or the submarines.
Okay, so the warheads are in a highly secure vault somewhere, and the missiles are in a silo or on a sub, but they aren't put together, like keeping the bullets outside of the gun.
Correct. And the strategic reason for that is safety and signaling. It prevents an accidental launch, and it signals to the world that your arsenal is purely defensive and retaliatory.
That makes sense.
If a crisis breaks out, it takes hours or even days to make the warheads to the delivery systems and prepare for launch. In nuclear strategy, that time is the most valuable currency.
Because it gives you options.
Exactly. It gives adversaries time to intervene, time to negotiate, or time to strike first.
But forward deploying 12 warheads at sea completely detonates that timeline.
It erases the time buffer entirely. A submarine on patrol with live mated warheads means the political decision to launch can be executed in minutes.
Wow. Minutes.
Yeah. The text suggests that communicating this zero response time, the shift from a peacetime retaliatory posture to a hair-trigger reality, is the entire point of the exercise.
And the author takes this a step further. The text doesn't just identify Washington and Beijing as the targets. It actually prescripts how these two multifaceted superpowers will react when this future catalyst Operation Sindoor 2 eventually drops.
Which is a bold claim.
Very bold. The author predicts that America will immediately rush to the phone, demanding a ceasefire, calling for restraint, and invoking the rules-based order.
Sounds familiar.
Right. Meanwhile, the text claims China will rush to protect its massive financial vulnerabilities, specifically citing CPEC, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, and the Gwadar Port, where billions of dollars in strategic access to the Arabian Sea are on the line. The author states that India knows this script by heart.
The author is painting a very specific picture of geopolitical predictability. It relies heavily on historical precedent.
Yeah.
The United States has historically played the role of the diplomatic referee in South Asian crises, attempting to manage escalation. China has increasingly played the role of the protective investor, prioritizing its Belt and Road initiatives and economic corridors over ideological conflicts.
Here's where it gets really interesting and honestly where I have to heavily question the author's certainty. Can a single country realistically prescript the exact psychological profiles and complex diplomatic reactions of two massive superpowers just by leaking that some submarines are on patrol?
It does seem like a stretch.
Right. I mean, you can't just game out Washington and Beijing like a simple computer algorithm. Human error, domestic politics, a sudden change in leadership. There are a million variables. It feels incredibly bold, maybe even arrogant, to assume you know exactly how they will behave in a white-hot crisis.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, I don't think the author is arguing that one nation can control the superpowers like puppets on a string.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It is more about fundamentally altering the diplomatic math those superpowers are forced to use.
So how does 12 warheads alter the math of a country like the United States?
Well, think about the menu of options available to a policymaker during a crisis. If Washington or Beijing believes the situation is conventional, localized, and contained, their menu of options is wide open. They might act aggressively, move carrier strike groups, or exert massive economic pressure to force a side to back down. But if they know because their intelligence agencies read it in a highly credible SIPRI report months earlier that live nuclear warheads are already forward deployed, and the response time is zero, that menu of options shrinks dramatically.
Because the risk of miscalculation becomes apocalyptic.
Exactly. The text implies the message is, factor this reality in before you even pick up that phone. The goal isn't to script their reaction perfectly. The goal is to heavily tax the cost of them intervening at all. The leak acts as a preemptive psychological strike against foreign interference.
They are essentially placing a massive, highly radioactive obstacle on the chessboard before the timer even starts.
That's a great way to put it.
They are telling Washington and Beijing, you can try to intervene, you can try to pressure us, but remember what is lurking beneath the water. Which brings us to the next vital piece of this deep dive. We have established the intended audience, and we have explored the diplomatic leverage this leak is supposed to create. Now, we need to look at the physical hardware the author claims is backing up this geopolitical flex.
The real steel behind the words.
Exactly. And more importantly, what is being deliberately hidden.
The transition from the abstract theory of deterrence to the tangible physical capabilities that enforce it.
Right. And the text introduces a very specific piece of hardware to make this point, the Agni 6 missile. According to the source material, this missile is officially listed as under development.
Quotation marks around under development.
Oh, heavy quotation marks.
Yeah.
But that status comes paired with a massive, highly specific detail, a stated range of 12,000 kilometers. The author then maps out exactly what 12,000 kilometers means in real-world geography, and it is a chilling lesson in reach. Udhampur to Washington, D.C., Vijay Durg to Beijing.
By explicitly linking those specific origin points to the capital cities of the superpowers, the author makes the abstract concept of range entirely concrete.
Yeah, it's not just a number anymore.
Right. Udhampur isn't just a random city. It is the critical, landlocked northern command center of the Indian military. Vijay Durg is a historic, strategic Western naval stronghold.
So 12,000 kilometers isn't just a number on a technical spec sheet. It's a statement of survivability.
It is a way of saying we aren't just a regional power dealing with border skirmishes. We have the geographic reach from our most secure, fortified positions to touch the heart of your command structures.
Wow.
It elevates the threat from a regional headache to an existential reality for the superpowers.
And this brings us to the absolute climax of the text, and frankly, my favorite part of this entire analysis.
Oh, this part is brilliant.
The real power of this strategy isn't just in what was revealed to the world. The author's ultimate thesis is that SIPRI did not simply discover anything on their own. They didn't stumble upon a secret. The state deliberately decided exactly what SIPRI would be allowed to see.
Yep.
Therefore, the real question isn't what was leaked about the 12 warheads or the 12,000-kilometer range. The real question is what was deliberately kept secret.
The awesome power of the unsaid.
I think about this like a high-stakes game of poker. You have a player who intentionally, seemingly by accident, knocks over one of their whole cards for the whole table to see. It's an ace of spades.
Ooh, it's my bad.
Exactly. Now, the rest of the table knows they have at least one terrifying card. But the real psychological torture isn't the ace they can see. It is the wild, paranoid calculations happening in their heads about what the other hidden cards might be.
Oh, 100%.
Did they just show me the ace because the rest of their hand is garbage? Or did they show me the ace because they're holding a royal flush and they want me to fold?
That captures the dynamic perfectly. When a state controls a leak with such precision, it creates a terrifying void for an adversary's intelligence agencies to stare into.
Void, yeah.
If a nation is comfortable enough to let satellites and think tanks see 12 live warheads, and they are comfortable announcing a 12,000-kilometer range for a missile that is merely under development, what do they actually have fully operational and hidden in the dark?
It weaponizes the adversary's own imagination against them.
Yeah.
Which brings me to the broader takeaway. If you are listening to this, you likely aren't a military strategist sitting in a war room calculating missile trajectories.
Probably not.
Since you aren't a military strategist, why should you care about the specific range of an Agni 6 missile or the silence surrounding the rest of an arsenal? So what does this all mean?
This raises an important question about how we, as a society, perceive information asymmetry. In everyday life, we usually think of a lack of information as a weakness, a blind spot.
Right, like we need to find the missing data.
Exactly. But the author's concluding, quote, flips that entirely on its head. The text says that silence should haunt every capital that has ever bet against this civilization. We have been patient for decades. Patience has a range, too.
Wow.
The author is framing information asymmetry, that deliberate, calculated silence, not as a lack of data, but as an active, potent weapon of psychological warfare.
Patience has a range, too.
Yeah.
That's such a heavy, loaded line. It connects the emotional and historical patience of an entire civilization directly to the literal 12,000-kilometer flight path of a ballistic missile.
It really does.
It suggests that the silence isn't empty space, it's loaded with consequence.
It tells you that in the highest echelons of global statecraft, what isn't said in a press release or what is conveniently left out of a think tank report is often vastly more important than the headline itself.
The invisible text.
Yeah. The silence is mathematically calculated to create a deterrent effect built entirely on an adversary's fear of the unknown. True power, according to this text, lies in making your enemy realize how staggeringly little they actually know about your capabilities, precisely because you controlled the one piece of information they arrogantly thought they discovered themselves.
Which brings us right back to where we started with that morning cup of coffee.
Mm-hmm.
For you, the listener, the core insight of this deep dive is that Information on the global stage is rarely just information.
Almost never.
It is almost always a tool, a payload, or a calculated misdirection. The next time you are scrolling your feed and you see a massive geopolitical headline citing unnamed intelligence officials or leaning heavily on reports from independent foreign think tanks, look past the breaking news.
Don't just read the surface.
Ask yourself the foundational questions. Who actually leaked this? Who is the intended audience for this specific data point? And what deeper unspoken narrative is being carefully crafted behind the scenes while everyone is distracted by the headline?
You have to start reading the negative space around the news.
And that leaves us with a final, lingering thought to mull over, building on everything this author laid out about the mechanics of signaling. If nations are actively using these controlled leaks to subtly signal the terrifying weapons they actually want their adversaries to know about, how do they navigate the true shadow game?
That is the million-dollar question.
What bizarre, complex mechanisms do global powers have to use to signal the devastating capabilities they want to keep completely secret from independent organizations like SIPRI, but perfectly chillingly clear to their enemies?
It makes you wonder what kind of messages are being transmitted right now that will never, ever make it to a public headline.
It really does. Because if a massive global news story is just a covert whisper between superpowers, imagine what real silence sounds like.